If you continuously run into this issue where you have products that are just piling on top of products, and you look at your Fair page or you look at your website or you look at your shop and it is full of so many different seasons of product that have just layered on top of one another, if that is you, if you've run into this, then this episode, this conversation, I think is going to really help you. I'm going to talk today about the product lifecycle, what that really means, and how you can use that when you're designing your collection, when you're buying into it, and how you can turn that into a strategy that will make you so much more profitable and really take the pressure off of designing and developing into newness and trying to reinvent the wheel. So I hope you enjoy the chat. Let's get into it. Hey friend, quick question for you. Are you feeling stuck with how to get your brand to stand out on Fair? I'm asking you because as a buyer myself, I can tell you that there are just so many brands out there vying for the attention of these buyers, but I know that your brand has something so special and it needs to be seen. I put together a private podcast for you that goes deeper into what buyers are really looking for on the Fair platform and how you can stand out from the crowd to grow your wholesale business and really land those dream buyers. So if this resonates with you, head to the link in the show notes for instant access. Welcome back to the Buyerside Chat. We're going to have another buyer chat today, really piggybacking off of the last episode. So if you did not listen to episode 81 yet, I encourage you to go back and give that a listen because it kind of tees up this conversation. So we're going to talk today specifically about what's called the product lifecycle. So if that's a new term for you, it's something that we used very regularly at every retailer I ever worked for, ever bought for, the product lifecycle. And really what that means is the life of a product, the life of a SKU. Now, what that means even further is how long a SKU is going to be a part of your full price collection, meaning it's available to purchase. It's intended to sit with all the other products that you're bringing in. So it's the product life cycle, the life of an item. And I want to talk about that because I'm not trying to get you to use this term in your day to day, but I really would love for you to walk away from this and start thinking about how long some of your SKUs have been quote unquote living at full price in your collection. So this conversation applies to brands, to retailers, or if you're a mix of both, right? How long has a SKU been living? And I want to talk about how you can really leverage it in your business to help you be more profitable and make smarter decisions and keep a really balanced assortment, a really balanced collection for your retailers that are coming in to buy wholesale or for your D2C customers. Because it all plays into that consumer psychology. I always like to say your retail buyers, your wholesalers are essentially customers, but they're just looking for ROI on that investment. And so you really want to think about how you build out your collection the same way you would think about that strategy that you give to your collection for your actual customers. So one of the biggest mistakes I see is that when I go and do these Fair audits, I will see so many pages of products, and I get it. It's really hard to know when to draw the line, particularly if you're a stationery brand, for example, and you're just bringing in new card designs, but you're not necessarily holding the inventory. You just start to pile design on after design, after design, after design, and then it's just too much. Buyers do not want to sift through 40 pages or even 20 pages of product. You might have really amazing products sitting on page like 15 that are never going to get seen because it's just too far down the line. They lose their attention span. Just like a customer goes to your website. They don't want to have to sift all the way through all your products if they go to the shop all tab. Just like you as a consumer are turned off by that as well. I've used the example before of you need to be in the right mindset to go into a Home Goods or a TJ Maxx or to a thrift store. You have to be in the right mindset to really want to pick and sort through things. And it doesn't really happen often, right? It has to happen. I don't know, naturally for you to want to do that. Otherwise, it's a turnoff and you turn around and you leave. So whenever you think about, okay, the product life cycle, how long is something going to live for? It helps to give you, I guess, a parameter or some rules for yourself around how much you're going to layer on, because things will ultimately have to go away. Really what this comes down to is that you have to learn to edit. You have to learn to be the editor of your collection, of your product offering. The word curated is overused, but it still is so true. Curating your assortment. That's what a buyer does. And I can't stress enough. I want you to really embrace that mindset of being the buyer of your own business. Okay? Be the buyer of your own business. Really think about how you can edit that collection to amplify your product offering. So when a buyer comes to your store, comes to your fair page, for example, or goes to your wholesale catalog or stops by your booth at a trade show, they can look and they can say, this brand has edited their collection to the best of the best. Everything has a reason for being in this assortment, right? Just like a customer walks into your store, goes onto your website, and they feel the same way. They feel maybe not like, oh, this person has assorted this, because they're not thinking that. What they're thinking is, oh my God, I love this and I love this and I have to have this and I have to have this, because all the things have a reason for being. It doesn't just feel like this slew of products that they have to sift through. That's how you become really good at curating, editing, whatever you want to call it, your assortment. So there are 3 life cycles that most retailers, actually all retailers I've ever worked for, buckets products into. So I'm going to go through those and I'm going to talk about how it could really translate into your own business. So the 3 life cycle buckets that products fall into, and I encourage you to think about for your business as well. The first one is evergreen, and that's usually defined as a product or a SKU that lives for 1 year or more, 12 months or more. Evergreen is 12 months or more. So that's a product that's just going to be full price all the time, has a reason for being. Those are best sellers. Those are basics. In the apparel world, those are basic tees, denim, I don't know, a chino pant, a classic blazer, or I don't know, let me think of some other things, a really classic dress. In your world, if you are a gift shop, that could be, or if you're not even a gift shop, if you're, selling your gift assortment, right? That could be a candle that has a fragrance that's seasonless. That could be your basic colored notebooks. Those are things that can live and have a reason for being no matter the time of year. So it could sell in spring and it could sell in holiday, and it makes no difference. People are coming back for it. Okay. The next one would be what's called a seasonal basic. Seasonal basic would be a product or a SKU that lives for 3 to 6 months. Okay. 3 to 6 months. That could be the full spring time period, or it could be full spring and summer, or it could be it drops for fall and it makes sense from fall all the way through holiday and then it goes away. Okay. So think of it that way. Now, fashion is an in and out SKU. So it comes in and it goes away quickly. It's just meant to be a little eyedropper moment. Eyedropper meaning just a little touch of a little extra something. That could be a price point that's a stretch for your customer or your buyer for your collection. That could be a really high price point. That could be a trend that you just want to test out. I talk about testing as well, how you can really think about bringing something in just to test it out in a really small way that's a low risk investment. And it's also just a way to bring in a trend that you're like, I don't necessarily want to have this be my whole identity or my whole personality, but it would be really fun to register this in my collection. That's a little harder when it comes to wholesale than it is when it comes to your D2C collection. So if you are thinking about, your wholesale assortment, your fashion might live a little longer, or maybe it does not make sense for you to do that. Or maybe you want to think about these a little differently for your collection. Fashion could maybe be 3 months. So that could be something for your business that you maybe adjust it where it's like, okay, this is just going to be around for 3 months and I'm just going to see if my wholesalers are interested in it. and it's just a little fashion moment, not a huge investment. And then whenever it comes to my D2C selling, I'm going to bring in this SKU or this product or this little mini collection just for 6 weeks, right? Just kind of in and out. I'm just going to test it out. So you can think about it in that way to wrap your head around it a little more. So evergreen is a year or more. Seasonal basic would be for a full season, a full 3 to 6 months. And fashion is in and out. So 1 to 2 months. Thinking about it in terms of your D2C selling. Okay. So how does this translate to your business? Like thinking about, okay, how can I implement something like this for my business? Really, it starts with that beginning of the process. When you're designing into or developing into or buying into your collection, I encourage you to think about what you already have selling at full price. Really evaluate it and think about, okay, what falls into these different buckets? How many products have I been selling for a year or more? Put those in a group, put that in a bucket, okay? How many products have sold for 3 to 6 months currently? Put those in a bucket. And then what do I have that's just like in and out? Likely you don't have a lot of those in and outs. And that is maybe part of the problem. So what falls into that little fashion bucket? Okay. Now look at what you are working with right now. And the first step is to just say, okay, what needs to go away, right? Like what can just no longer be an evergreen product? What's not actually driving revenue? Okay. Or in those evergreen products, maybe there's something that you're like, this sells really well spring and summer, and it drops off of a cliff for the holidays. That would mean that maybe that's a SKU or a product that you pull off of your website, you pull off of Faire, you pull out of your catalog for the second half of the year so that you're not muddying the waters. You're not causing your buyer or your customer to see something that isn't relevant because they're not going to buy it, because you know they're not going to likely buy it at that time period. So take that decision fatigue away and make it easier for them to get to the heart of it and get to what they know is going to sell or what you know is going to sell. Make it easier for them. So something that is evergreen maybe needs to become seasonal basic, and then you can define when that's going to be at full price. Okay. Look at what you have seasonal basic and maybe say, oh, this actually should be evergreen. This is actually doing well enough, and I think it would still make sense in my collection going forward. And in that case, maybe you don't need to design into a new thing to replace it because you can just continue to sell it. Going back to episode 81, when I talk about, is something replacing or is it adding value? Making that decision. So it's really good to just kind of start with what you're already working with before you start designing into new things. What's that baseline? So for example, if you're thinking about, okay, I have to design my holiday collection, looking at what you've already got to work with and deciding, I need X number of new SKUs that fall into the seasonal basic category. Or I need X number that are going to just live for 3 months, X number that are going to live for 6 months. And then you can start to define how much newness you need to be designing into. When you're designing into new products, you assign the quote unquote life to that product. You say, I'm designing into one new evergreen product because I know I need to anniversary a big launch that did a lot of revenue and is still doing well for me, but I need another one because I have this new idea that's additive. Or my old evergreen is downtrending and I need to replace it with something. So when you start to design into these life cycle buckets or categories, you start to think in terms of how that relates to your inventory, how that relates to your total offering that you're going to have at full price. You start to think about what it looks like at any point in time. So instead of just continuously piling newness on top of it, you're thinking, all right, I'm bringing in this one new product that's going to live for 12 months. That means I don't have to think about that for a bit. I can just design that, launch it in this collection, and then I'm good. Now I know that I need, X number that are going to come in for 3 to 6 months and define that. And then, all right, I only need a few fashion things. I only need a couple of things that are just fun little ideas. If something that you're bringing into your collection you don't think could sell at full price for that long of a time period, then you either want to invest in less inventory of it or you want to make less of it. Or maybe it's not really necessary in your business because you have all these other ones. Or you have too many of these things that have just compiled and you haven't really, quote unquote, like pulled the trigger to say, okay, this actually needs to go away. It hasn't really been selling anymore because it was only meant to be new for a certain time period. I think that's one of the things that I see happening often is that there's a new SKU that's brought in as part of a seasonal collection, and then it's just left there because it sold well, but it's not really relevant in the future. And then it's just like sitting there and it's on page 15 or page 18 of your Fair page or of your website on Shopify. And it's like no one's buying it because it's buried and it's not really relevant anymore. So don't be afraid to either get rid of it entirely or just turn it off for a little bit, put it into draft mode so that your customers and your buyers don't see it. It's still there. It still has all the data attached to it, all the selling history on Fair or all the, SEO history with Google. It's still there in the background. You can turn it back on whenever it's relevant again. Okay. So thinking about that when you're designing into newness helps you to just really balance out your assortment. One of the other things that's really, really helpful with doing this is it helps you to really leverage quantity for cost savings. This was, in addition to really being strategic about how many full price choices we had on a floor in retail, in the physical store space or on the website, it also was so helpful with inventory planning because we knew going into it, this is how much I need to invest in this product in order for it to live for this full period of time. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy it all at one time or in some instances, develop into it or produce all of it at once. But it gives you an idea of what that investment over time is going to look like. So how that can help you on the profit side of it is you can negotiate with your suppliers, or you can, if you're a retailer, you can negotiate with the brand and say, hey, my projection is that I'm going to be buying X number of units over the course of X amount of months. Is there anything we can do to negotiate a cost here, either up front or over the course of the PO, right? Just kind of having those conversations to help you negotiate better and get a better cost on that product. Now, on the flip side, you wouldn't do that for a fashion SKU because it's just a little in and out, right? No one's going to care that you're buying enough for 1 to 2 months of a SKU, right? But a 6-month product, a 12-month product, having those projections and having that idea around it will help you to negotiate and also plan out your inventory needs, your investment for that inventory. Thinking ahead about, okay, I know I need to have this much inventory at all times to be able to sell this, helps you to start to work with that cash flow and know when you need to have cash set aside for investing back into that inventory for something that is an evergreen product. Instead of just like winging it and being like, oh crap, I need to buy more of this and I don't have money for it. Oops. Because I spent all this money on developing into all these new fashion things that aren't going to really drive volume. They're just meant to have my collection feel fun and relevant. Okay. The other thing, it gives you a little bit more stability when it comes to marketing. Stability might not be the right word, but you can really have a repeatable marketing strategy when you know what you have kind of as your mainstay in your business. You likely already can think of at least a couple of things that you're like, I know these are like the workhorses in my business. They drive volume, they drive profit. I know that these do well for me. So you can create a marketing strategy that really makes sure you're protecting those evergreen 12-month or longer. I mean, you could have an evergreen product for years in your business. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's fantastic. Thinking about how you can create a marketing strategy that speaks to those over and over and over again will just streamline it for you because look, you're going to have your marketing pretty much planned out for you when it comes to that. When it comes to pitching your retailers, you can, of course, continuously pitch those knowing with confidence that they make sense in your collection. And also, when it comes to those seasonal basics, the ones that you know are going to live for 3 to 6, likely the 6-month amount of time, those you can kind of hammer home and continuously speak to them. And you don't get, chase the shiny object syndrome with all the fashion things that while they're fun to talk about, they're not really going to drive the volume in your business. And you're also not going to be buying as much inventory in those because they're just little fun moments. That doesn't mean you can't market to them at all, but they should be in support of your seasonal basics or your evergreen products. So when you're thinking about like, okay, I am trying to think about how I can bring in new product and I have all these ideas, I'm not really sure which way to turn. Well, first of all, listen to episode 81 and then come back to this conversation and really think, okay, coming at my assortment with this strategy in mind, meaning I know the filters and the parameters around what products fit into my brand positioning, where I see my brand going. I have filters and guardrails up so I don't go crazy and I'm really sticking with what I want to be known for. And I think about how I can design into these different product life cycles. It helps you to get really focused on what's going to really move the needle, what's going to drive profit in your business, what's going to help establish you as the brand that you want to be. And it's going to free yourself from this feeling that you need to always be delivering something new. It'll give you that confidence that you have a structure in your product offering where you have products that are just going to live and continue to drive volume for you. And you can just have fun with the fashion moments and just have fun with designing into the little things that could be eyedroppers. Or you can hone in and put all your effort on, I need to find a new evergreen, basic bestseller in my collection. So I'm going to put my efforts there. It just gives you that point of view in that design, development, and buying process. It helps you give a point of view for your marketing to really streamline that. And it also helps you on the bottom line with profit because you can negotiate better costs and you can balance out and plan out your cash flow in a way that supports your business needs and is really structured and gives you that confidence when you're making decisions because you know what's coming down the pipeline. So I hope that this conversation was helpful and fun for you. Like I always say, I really love having these buyer conversations, but I also really, really love to hear what you want to hear about. So if there's a topic that you want me to go into more, please leave me a DM on Instagram. I love voice notes so much. Come find me at Kristen Fisher Coaching on Instagram and let's chat about how you could apply this in your business or some other topics that you'd like to hear about. Hope you enjoyed the chat. If you're ready to take your wholesale business to the next level on Faire, I invite you to check out the Faire Bootcamp. It's the only program of its kind that combines a step-by-step growth approach to optimize and stand out on Faire and buyer relationship building strategies to capture the attention of your ideal retailers, both on and off the Faire platform. With bite-sized, action-focused trainings, the Faire Bootcamp is designed to deliver results as quickly and efficiently as possible because I know you are busy and you do not have time to waste. So to learn more, head over to kristenfishercoaching.com/Faire Bootcamp. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. If you are loving the show, I would be so beyond grateful if you would rate and review the podcast and share it with one of your biz besties to help spread the word. I hope that you absolutely crush your sales this week. I'll be back to chat with you next Monday.